What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can draw this cute frog from start to finish using the iPad and Procreate. And just like always, it's in real time too, no time lapse, no edits. So if you want to follow along step by step and draw with me, keep watching. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and draw a frog. Starting out, I'm using a 4000 by 4300 DPI canvas. For my brush, I'm going to start out using my cartooning set. We'll just use the sketch pencil for this one to start out the sketch. And for my color palette, once again, I've got this pre-made, so if you want to download this, follow along with the exact same colors that I'm using in today's tutorial. You can find this same color palette on my website. If you go to bjaydell.com, underneath the YouTube reference materials page, which I'll link this down in the description below, you'll find this there. You can save it. There's a video at the top of the page that walks you through how to install a palette if you don't know, and you can follow along with the same colors. So let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, I'm going to start here using that sketch pencil, and I'm just going to use a black to start sketching with. And to start out here, let's just draw an oval right here in the middle. This will be kind of the shape that we're going for the head. And then down here, we'll draw another smaller oval for the body. And I kind of want to have him sitting on a lily pad here. So let's just really lightly draw an oval down here for the lily pad. That'll help us kind of visualize where everything else should go. And then from here, let's start working on the legs and the arms here. So just pull a line out here and here for that arm. Kind of do a 3/4 view here. I'll do another arm coming out here, or leg, I guess. And then I'm just going to pull out 3 lines here to kind of show where the fingers are going to come out, or the toes, which would it be? And then we'll draw another oval back here for one leg and a bigger oval here. So we've got a 3/4 view going on right now. So if I draw this in here, you can kind of see. So everything on the right hand side of the center line is going to be a little bit bigger than the left. So you can see this leg here is going to be bigger than this one just because of the perspective that we've got going on. And then we'll kind of draw out the toes here coming off this one. I'm just going real loose and light here. I'm not going super crazy with details. This is just kind of getting the feeling for where everything's going to be at. Then as I got that in there, I'm going to kind of curve around the belly here and pull that back in to the back here. So it's got a little bit more curve here towards the front. And I think that's pretty good for the overall shape there. So let's go ahead and work on the head now. So I want to go ahead and get some eyes in here really big up at the top. Once again, we're doing that 3/4 perspective. So this eye here on the right is going to be bigger, plus it's going to come over top of the one here on the left. So now that we've got that, we can kind of start bringing in the rest of the shape of the head. So we got these really big kind of brows coming up here. We'll bring that other one over here as well. This one needs to be a little bit smaller though. We'll just continue this back down and around into where the chin, the cheek and the chin come in. Gonna have an overlap there. Get the eyes in here so we know where those go. Kind of a little overlap here. It's where the eye kind of meets that. And overlap there, so he's kind of got this kind of folds and creases there. And we'll bring around this cheek here down into the chin and actually do a chin down here. I think that looks pretty good. Here then we'll kind of draw a middle section here. We can have this be a different color down here to kind of break up the face. And then we'll have the mouth down here into a tongue. Pull in an overlap down there for the bottom lip. And overall, I think that's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and flesh out this a little bit more down here. So I'm going to drop the size of this so I've got a little bit more control. I'm just going to get these fingers or toes or whatever you want to call them in here a little bit more. Kind of bring out the leg here so you've got this thigh here kind of creasing as it goes back into the leg. We're just doing these kind of big bulbous ends to these to really make it look frog-like. Do that crease for that thigh there. Bring this down once again into that foot. We've got those kind of bulbous areas there. So this is really loose. It's really sketchy. It's very, very kind of basic in this stage. I'm moving down just a little bit here. And that's going to be our sketch. So from here, we can go ahead and start inking. So to do the inking process, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to my layers and I'm going to make a new layer. This is going to be our inks layer. We're going to draw on top of the sketch layer. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the N for the blend mode on my sketch and just turn down the opacity of this. We don't want to be able to see it like crazy. We just want to have it really light there in the background. And then we're going to draw on this layer 2. And for this, I'm going to go ahead and come up here to my color palette. And I'm going to switch over to this dark green. That's going to be our outline color for the frog. And then for my brush, I'm going to come back up here to my brush menu. Still in this cartooning pack, I'm going to switch over to my standard ink or streamline. And from here, I kind of want to decide, okay, where's the light source coming in? I've talked about this before. Deciding this before you even start inking can really help you with the line weights of your design. So anything closer to the light source is going to have a thinner line that kind of represents that light coming in. That's going to be the areas that have a little bit more highlights to them. And then as you move further away from the light source, that's where the shadows are going to be, and that's where your lines are a little bit thicker. And that is how you can use line weight to kind of do the heavy lifting, showing the viewer where the light source is coming from. So I think on this, I'm going to have the light source coming in from this top left-hand corner. So now that we've got that decided, we know everything over here is going to have a little bit lighter of a line weight. Everything back here is going to be a little bit thicker. So I'm going to zoom in here just a tad, and we'll start on the face here. And I think I'll start down here. I'm just going to bring up this and around, and you'll see it's heavier back here. And as I start to get up here, it gets a little bit lighter. I'm also going to come in here with my standard inker eraser and just kind of fix the tapers just a tad bit here. Kind of get them a little bit sharper right there. Now I can go over here and do this one. Once again, this one's going to be a little bit lighter because it is towards that light source coming in. From here, go ahead and do the eye. Do that a little bit lighter line here. Just holding down locks that into an oval shape. Kind of cleans it up a little bit. So we've got those in there. Let's go ahead and do the pupils now. So just fill these in here and here. And then with a lighter line now, I'm going to go around here and add in the iris around there. Get those in there. Looks good. Pull them back out so you can see it a little bit. Then we'll just kind of continue following this around. Lighter lines here on the inside. I save the heavier lines for the outside, and then everything on the inside, I usually try to use lighter lines as I'm going around. Want these a little bit lighter. Erase down here so I can get this chin in here. Trying to connect it there with that one that I've already done there. And fixing this taper here. And now I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. As I bring this line around, I want to overlap these so I don't have to try to get them to match up. But what this is going to do is it's going to allow me to erase really easy. So I can start here, pull down, you see that I go over top of those, But now switching back to my eraser, since these are on separate layers, I don't have to worry about not erasing what I've already got done there. It makes it really, really easy. Go ahead and do a light line here for this kind of break there in the middle. And I'm going to go ahead and pinch these layers together now that we're done with that. So we've got these all back on one layer here. Bring around the crease here for that eye. Maybe pull up another crease here underneath. Just like that. Go ahead and do the mouth here. Once again, just a little bit lighter of a line in the center here since it's not an outline. A piece there on the inside of the mouth. Like here too, we'll go ahead and do the eyebrows up here. Get these a little bit thicker. Once again, I love doing eyebrows on animals just because most of the time, you know, especially like a frog, it's not going to have eyebrows, but you can really add in a lot of expression and emotion with adding in eyebrows, even when they don't necessarily have them in real life. We'll get this line here down underneath for that bottom lip there. A little bit thicker there. All right. And that's pretty much that top part. I'm going to do a little overlap here. So that comes out. And then we'll probably add in some little circles here off to the side so we can kind of break up that color of the face. Add some of these in. Once again, just really light line weights here. I don't want these to be too overpowered. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. So now we can pull down here and start to work on the body. Once again, I'm going to do some overlapping here. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to make a new layer so I don't have to worry about erasing things that I've already done. Still using that standard Inker streamline. And I'm going to start here on the body and just kind of pull this around. Once again, coming up there in the back, a little bit thicker. One more time. There we go. And now I can go in here and erase. And you see, I'm not erasing those sections that I've already done. So it makes it really nice. And of course here, I forgot to kind of add in the fingers that I did over there, but that's okay. We'll just kind of wing it here. Pull out, well, let's see. Yeah, let's start here. And I think I'm going to start here from the bottom so I can kind of use one motion there for that. Makes it easier to use one motion there for that part that swoops around like that. By starting with the flat end there and coming up like that. Once again, just trying to get the right line weight in there. And that looks pretty good. We'll go ahead here and get the leg in here. And as you're going around and doing lines, don't feel bad if you've got to go in there and erase a couple times. You'll see me back in and back out of a line. And that's one of the great things about digital art is you're never locked into an inked line. You can just double tap that, do the undo, and go back in there and try it a few times. So if you don't get it the first time, don't feel bad. Just try it a few times until you get it to look right. Which is kind of what I'm doing here, just making sure that tapers down right as that leg kind of folds into that foot there. All right, so there we go. Let's go ahead and do this one next. Again, pulling these lines down. And then doing these. Once again, starting out with this one so the flat edge comes out, which makes it easier to curve that. And you see here, I'm not really following this exactly with my lines on my sketch. The The lines for your sketch is really just supposed to be a rough representation of where everything goes. Don't feel like you have to trace them perfectly. That's also why I don't really spend a ton of time fine-tuning the sketch. I know I'm going to come back in here and things are going to look a little bit different. So keep that in mind as you're going in. Don't worry about having to make it 100% perfect. I'm noticing here too, these lines are a little bit thick towards the front here compared to these. And once again, with my light source coming in like it is, I want these to be a little bit thinner. So I'm going to come back in here one more time and do those just a little bit thinner so that everything still matches up with that light source coming in. All right, there we go. Looks good. Move on here to this back one. And I kind of want this to break off here. So we're going to erase right here in the center. And I'm going to taper these lines in towards each other. So that this can kind of come up a little bit differently here with the back leg here. I want to have a little bit more of a broken taper there, so I don't want the line to connect. Now I can go ahead and start here, pulling that crease up for the thigh there. That up and around, and then into this back foot. A little bit more taper on that end there. Pulling out, and that's what we're left with. So I think that looks pretty good. Now, well, I've got an extra line down here. I got to get that out of there. Now we can go ahead and do the lily pad. So I'm going to make another new layer here. Let's pinch these together. Once again, I just want to overlap. I don't have to worry about erasing. So we'll have a cutout right here, kind of a triangle. Just like this. A little bit thinner on the line weight. And if you hold down, it'll lock in that triangle line there. Now we can go back up here and erase these so they meet up. Then I'm going to have this come down here at an angle, or a straight line, so this comes out at an angle here, so it gives that kind of three-dimensional look. Do the same thing here. And now I'm going to go ahead and make another new layer to get these to match up. So I'm going to have this kind of come out here, curve around to there. Then we'll erase to match these up. Like that. And same thing here. This one's going to come back out and around. Just need to have the angle right here. The thickness as it comes around. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. So we'll erase this. And everything matches up there. So I'm going to pull back out here. I'm going to turn off my sketch layer. And then I'm going to go ahead and pinch all these together so my inks are totally on one layer. And that's what we're left with as far as our design goes. I think that looks pretty good. I've got a little dot there. I need to get that out of there. Oops. Erase that real quick. All right. And there we go. Last thing I want to do is just kind of add in some little kneecap lines here for that. And that's going to be our finished inked design. So now we're ready to move on to actually coloring this in. So to begin coloring, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to my layers menu once again. I'm going to make a new layer, and then I'm going to drag this down underneath my lines layer. So we got lines, we've got a new blank layer. This is going to be our color flats. And then we have our sketch layer down here. So, and that sketch layer, of course, is turned off. So with our lines layer up here, I'm going to tap on this and I'm going to set this as a reference. So once again, I've talked about this in previous videos before. This is my method for coloring in because we can go down here to layer 3 and we can start dropping our color flats in on this layer. And it's going to use our lines layer to basically tell where everything goes as far as colors. It's going to keep it inside those lines that we've already done. So switching here on my color palette to this green now, I'm going to go ahead and start dropping in my colors for my head and my body. Do the legs here. That's pretty much it for that green. Then I've got this yellow here. So this is going to be for that bottom part of the face. This will also be for these little circles here we've got. Once again, this kind of breaks up that color, that green, so it's just not a solid color throughout there. See here, I've got a little overlap right there. I want to get rid of that real quick before I go any further. Just knock that out real quick. And you see that overlap because it's all in one layer now. It's really hard. You got to get in there really tight to get that exactly removed. And that's why I do those separate layers to avoid having to do that until, you find it later on. So next up, moving down our colors, we've got this blue. So we're going to do that for the eyes. Need to do the white next. But to do this, I want to turn off the background color because with the background color on, it looks like the eyes are colored in, but they're not. So doing that, we can make sure we've got everything filled in here. So we'll drag those in. And I'm on the wrong layer here, of course. So let me back out here one more time. Always make sure you're on the right layer. So back to our color flats layer here. I'm going to turn off the background color. Got to do that blue again because that one was on the wrong layer. And white. We'll get the eyes here and then those little highlights here in the pupils. We'll get those in there. All right. Now that we've got that done, we can go ahead and turn on our background color again. Moving down some more, we've got this darker red. Do that the inside of the mouth, and then this kind of magenta red. Do that for the far inside. Then I've got a pink for the tongue. Throw that in there. Next up, we've got this kind of neonish green. That's going to be for the lily pad down here, but I think I want to go ahead and make this on a new layer. So let's throw that on a separate layer. And then I've got this darker green right here. Do that. Actually, let's do the darker green now. We're going to do this back on the main layer. And this will make sense here in a second. So layer 3, the main color flats layer, we'll use that for the darker green here. Try it one more time there. All right. Now I want to add a little bit of texture in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to my layers menu again. I'm going to switch over to the lily pad layer here, that green on the top. And then with that darker green still selected, I'm going to move back here to my brush library and I'm going to go over to my texture pack. And I've got this plant texture in here. And I'm just going to come in here real light on top of that green and throw in some of that texture. But I want to alpha lock this because you saw I was going outside of the lines. And with alpha lock, what it'll do is it keeps it directly on whatever's colored in on that layer. So with alpha lock set, when we color this now, it's only going to show up on that lily pad. It's not going to go outside of the lines there. So we've got a nice kind of texture there that you can see as I zoom in. I think that looks pretty cool. So that's pretty much going to be our color flat. So from here, we're ready to move on to actually doing our shadows and our highlights. So to do shadows and highlights, I'm going to come up here to my layers menu. We'll start out with the body itself. So if we go then to layer 3, which was our color flats layer here, I want to go ahead and make a new layer. And this one we're going to set to clipping mask. So with clipping mask works a lot like alpha lock, but you're on a separate layer. So when we start coloring in the shadows and highlights, it's going to stick to what we have down here colored in on layer 3, but it's going to be a separate layer. So we can actually go in there and adjust the opacity of it and change the looks of it without affecting what's on this layer. So now that we've got that set as alpha lock, I'm going to come up here to my color palette and I'm going to switch to this purple here. That's going to be our shadow color. And from here then, I'm going to move back to my brush library and I'm going to move back to my cartooning set. And I'm going to just use the regular standard inker here for this right now. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And what I want to do is I just want to get a pretty decent amount of this area colored in. So I want to see what this is going to look like on these different colors once I adjust the opacity. So once I have a pretty big section colored in, I can go ahead, adjust the opacity on that layers menu and know exactly what it's going to look like between the different colors. On certain colors, adjusting the opacity, it might look a little too dark and it might look a little too light on others. So I need to have a kind of pretty good overview between the different values. Once again, I've got that light source coming in from this top left side. So I know that my shadows are going to be back here on this right-hand side, which allows me to kind of block these in pretty quick because I know where the light source is coming in from. We already decided that at the beginning. And as I'm doing these shadows, basically what I'm trying to do is just move with the curves that I've already established with those ink lines. So I'm just kind of following along with the flow of the design and just making sure that everything kind of has that same energy and the same direction. If I drag and drop this in, I need to turn off reference first. This reference is going to want to fill it all in. Now if I go back to my shadow layer here and fill this in, see that I'll quickly just kind of drop that. And then I'll continue this down here. Larger area filled down here. And then we are going to go back in and actually erase some of these shadows. I don't want everything shadowed in because it's really hard to tell as a viewer that an area is shadowed in if everything on this back side is just a solid shadow color. You kind of need something to break that up. So we'll talk about that here in a second as well. Get these colored in. And you see how nice this is too, having that lily pad on a separate layer. I don't have to worry about hitting that with the shadows and going outside of the lines. So that kind of saves some time too and allows you to be a little bit messier than you normally would be. You see, I'm just kind of following around with that curve that those lines already make. That helps me kind of determine how that shadow flows. So I know a lot of people struggle with shadows and wonder, okay, how do you decide, number one, where they go, but then number two, how they look on the design? And that's really what you kind of want to do, is go with the flow of the lines that you've got in from that inking stage. I'm just hitting down here underneath, get a shadow down here. That leg's going to be given off there. That looks good. A little bit one here. And overall, I think that's pretty good. Get one down here underneath that little fold. All right, so now we're ready to drop the opacity. So if we go up here to our layers menu, hit the N for the blend mode, drop this down, I think probably about 22% looks pretty good there. I'll go ahead and leave it there. Now I'm going to go into my eraser and do some erasing now. I'm going to use the standard inker Streamline in my cartooning pack here. And you'll see, like I said, I'm just going to kind of pull away some of these shadows so that you can see that there's two different colors there. Pulling them away on the area there closer to the light source. and going back in to build them back up if I erase too much. Just kind of like a back and forth process there. There's that. Maybe do like a kind of curve taper there for that to break that up a little bit more. Down here, probably pull just a couple of areas out here, nothing too crazy. And some of these, like here, you're really not going to have a highlight over here, but I'm going to do those just to kind of bring out the bulbous nature of those toes. Kind of make them a little bit more prominent here. Just like that. And I think that's pretty good for doing the erasing of the shadows. So now we can go in and actually work on some highlights now. So once again, I'm going to come up here to my layers menu. I'm going to make a new layer once again. And I'm going to set this to clipping mask as well. So you can have multiple clipping masks stacked on top of each other. This one's got the arrow down, showing layer 3 is what it's kind of clipped to. And then anything on top of that you clip is going to basically just kind of ladder off that. So we're still clipped to that layer 3. And for my highlight, I'm going to come back up to my colors palette. I'm going to use this kind of whitish yellow color for my highlights there. Then I can go in and start knocking these in. I'm going to switch this to the streamlined version now because I'm mostly going to hit these outlines here. So once again, just following that curve of that line around. It's going with the flow that I've already got going with the outline. And I've talked about before, I usually use highlights a little bit more sparingly than I do shadows. I usually go heavier with shadows, and highlights are usually not as seen in the design. Just a little bit more here and there. Those in there, a couple little circle dots there. Get some shadow or some highlights here. I think I need to add a little bit of shadow here on the inside. So I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to go back to my purple and going back to my shadows here. I'm just going to hit inside the mouth just a little bit. It looks a little bland compared to everything else, since everything else has shadows and that doesn't. So just add some dots in there too. I think that's good. All right, so back then to my highlights here. I'm going to bring this one down a little bit more too. This is something, as you go along, feel free to come back and revisit parts that you've already done too. You might see a part that could use a little touching up. Like that looked like one solid line coming down. I kind of wanted it to break off a little bit more. So zooming back out, going back to my highlights layer, back to my highlight color, and then just kind of continuing those highlights down. Really big on doing these kind of ovals for highlights as well. Just hitting that side that's going to be affected by that light source. These videos, I try not to zoom too much, but you at home have the ability to just constantly zoom in and zoom out, so feel free to do that. I've talked about this and said it numerous times, but the better something looks super zoomed in, the even better it's going to look super zoomed out. So get in there really close, dig in deep, and just don't be afraid to constantly zoom your artwork in and out, because it's going to help you make better artwork in the long run. Once again, another great thing about digital art. So I've got a pretty good setup here for the highlights. I'm going to go ahead now and drop the opacity of this. So once again, coming up to my layers menu, hitting N for blend mode and dropping this down. It's going to be a little bit higher, I think, so probably about 30% looks pretty good there. I think that's a pretty good amount of highlights. Get a good amount of reflection there off of that. So that looks good. I think I'm going to add one more. I don't know if it'll even show up here. Maybe a little bit. Shows up a little bit there just to break that up. And same thing here on the lip. Just adding a tad bit in there. All right. I also want to add in some shadows here to the eyes. So once again, let's make another new layer. And I'm going to set this as clipping mask. And then coming back up to my color palette, I'm going to go to the blue that we use for the eyes right there. And let's just kind of use a tapered oval here around the back. So this is going to give the eyes a little bit of shadow here. Just like that. I pull this down and around this one here. And then any overlaps there, just erase those. I think that looks good. Also going to do a couple of ovals in there as well, I think. Just lock those in there. And now that we've got those, we can go ahead, coming back up to our layers menu, hitting the N for blend mode on that blue and just kind of dropping these down. Maybe about a 25%. Yeah, maybe 30%. That looks good. So now we've got some shadows in there too. We could also go in here too on the same layer, going back to our purple, and we could throw in some shadows around the back of the eye, or the back of the iris too. If you want to do that, kind of make those pop a little bit more. Don't want to get too much in there. Once again, want it to be apparent to the viewer that there is a shadow there by still having a lot of that base value in there. Do the same here, kind of go around the bottom and back out. Then also, if you want to select white from right here, hold down, we can add in some highlights there on the front too, so that pops a little bit more. All right, so that's pretty much it then for the frog. Now we've got to knock in some shadows here on the lily pad itself. So coming back up to our layers menu, I'm going to go to layer 4 right here, the lily pad, make a new layer, and we'll set this as clipping mask. Coming back up to our colors palette and go into that purple again. And we'll just kind of get in here and knock in some shadows underneath and off to the right. Once again, got that light source coming in from that top left. So we'll just get some shadows in there. Just kind of following around with the flow of the frog itself. Fill that in. I think here this is going to be pretty much just big shadow here crossing around. This will be kind of easier to fill in like this and take less time. We'll just do it like this. I think that's connected. Let's see. Yep, that's pretty well connected. And once again here, just kind of going with that flow again, cleaning this up so it looks a little bit nicer. Pulling one more shadow back here from this one. All right, now we can go ahead, go up to our layers menu and drop the opacity of this one by hitting the N for the blend mode. Bringing that down to, going about 18, I think, on that one. I think it looks pretty good. And there we go. So we've got pretty much a finished design, but really think something's lacking in the background. So I still want to add stuff in the background. I threw a couple of extra colors in there for that. So let's do that finally to kind of cap out the design. So if we go down to the very bottom, layer 1, let's make a new layer. And coming up here to the color palette again, I've got this bright blue on the very bottom row. And then I'm going to come in here and just make a big circle. Hold down with one finger and then hold down with the other one to lock it in to a perfect circle. And then let go. We can drag and drop to fill that in. And the circle itself is kind of plain, so to mix this up a little bit, let's go up to our adjustments menu here, and then coming down near the bottom, we've got liquify. Using liquify, we can just kind of pull this around and kind of make a funky background design here. Just so it's not a perfect circle, it looks a little bit more entertaining than that. I think that's pretty good. So we got a kind of fun background there. From here, I'm going to come up to my eraser and just using the standard anchor here for erasing. I'm just going to make some circle erasing in here. A lot of times I don't use the pen because you see right here, it's got this kind of overlap there that happens with this brush. So that's why I use my finger quite a bit. It's because I don't want that extra little overlap line there. So that's why I'll switch off from my finger to the pencil. But just doing these kind of haphazard, just wherever on the screen. This is up to you, where you can kind of add your own flair to it. Just get these added in like this, just wherever. I think that looks good. From here then, I want to get those knocked out. I want this to be a big hole right there. So to do this, I'm going to go up to my selection menu and I'm going to use automatic. And then I'm just going to tap, if this stays on screen, I'm just going to tap on the inside of those circles. And that's going to select all those. Then coming up to my layers menu then, and go to layer 9, tap that and just hit delete or clear. And that's going to totally erase those. So now those are not there anymore. You can see that they're totally removed from the design. So now we can make this a little bit more 3D. So let's go to the bottom, layer 1. We'll make a new layer here. And then coming back up to my color palette, I'm going to go with this darker blue right here. I'm going to switch my brush. Actually, no, I'm just going to use that standard anchor still. And I'm going to come up behind here and just kind of make this tapered area behind here that makes that look three-dimensional. So if you almost think kind of like that SpongeBob look, where he's got his holes, and this is that same kind of look we're going for here. And we'll just do this to all the circles. It's a really easy way to make them look a little bit more three-dimensional, give a little bit more depth and dimension to something that's pretty flat and plain. So I think that looks good. From here then, let's just make it pop a little bit more. So on layer 9, just the basic shape we've got, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to alpha lock that. So we're going to draw directly on top of here. And then I'm going to come up to my brush library again, and I'm going to switch back to that texture pack. We'll use that texture pack down here for the lily pad. And I'm going to use specs down here. And then I'm just going to come in here with this darker color and just kind of build this up a little bit more. So it's going to be darker here towards the back. And then I think just selecting white towards the front here, we're just going to hit in some lighter areas here towards the front. So it's kind of following that same light source coming in. So we've got, darker towards the back, lighter towards the front. And then we can also come back in with that base color and kind of just mesh those together to have a little bit more texture there, that base color. All right, and that's going to be our finished design. So finally, I'm just going to go ahead and make a new layer here, switch back to my original color and sign this with my cartooning set. Zoom in down here at the bottom. All right, right, and there we go. A cute little frog from start to finish using Procreate and the iPad and a couple of my brush packs. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video, got some value out of it. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell for notifications so you can get alerted when I post new videos. Also, if you guys take part in any of these tutorials and you do a design based on these videos and you post it online, I definitely want to see it. So if you're on Instagram or Twitter, post your design there, tag me at BJDell. Or if you're on Facebook, I also have a group called Keep Creating, a group for artists by artists, which I will link that in the description below. But it's a place where you can share your work based on these videos or really just anything artwork related that you're working on. Got a group of really supportive people who we just all enjoy seeing everybody's work so much. So if you want to join that, like I said, linked in the description below, place where you can give feedback, get feedback, meet new people. It's an awesome place to be and want you guys to be a part of it. As for me, I can be found online, bjdell.com. And that's it for today's video. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, keep creating.